us to lead us.
Okay, please everyone join me, Castro. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda.
And so I know that Reverend Castro has a lot of information to share about Echo Sangha, and we are here, especially at the Betsuing, are so excited because Lynn Arakaki is our chair for Echo Sangha, and we have really been trying to be mindful in sustainability here at the Betsuing. And so we're looking forward to today will be an extra impetus for us to listen to you and for you to share how we can be better stewards of the earth. And so, Reverend Castro?
Thank you very much. And I really appreciate your being, you're indulging me as far as my not being there. I had intended, I think up until Wednesday or Thursday, I anticipated that I was going to be flying there, but then all around me, people are getting COVID. And I thought, if I go up there and I get sick on the plane, I'm bringing it to all of you. Plus, I'm stuck up there because I need to be quarantined. And so I thought, oh gosh, well, very, very reluctantly, I asked if I could have a Zoom presentation. And so you're so fortunate to have Greg as someone who can facilitate and do this. He was coaching me last night on the presentation and how to access Zoom. So anyway, I'm here in my basement in Seattle, and the one thing about being away from home is you don't have all these distractions, and you can focus completely. Well, I'm in the basement, and the washer and dryer are down here, and so if you hear the dryer go off, I'll just be 5 minutes, and I'll have to take the laundry out of the dryer, and I figured I could bring it over here and fold it while I'm talking to you. And no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But anyway, it's the one thing that's very good about being in my little cubby hole in my office is that I've got everything for the presentation laid out almost in a circle around me, so I can access things easily. I wanted to start the presentation today with a Vandana Tisarana. I know since I started with the notes, but I wanted to show you the earth touching posture, our logo for the Eco Sangha, and then a Vandana that we use for the Eco Sangha here in Seattle. So would you please join me in Gasho? Homage to him, the exalted one, the enlightened one, the supremely awakened one, the one who is well grounded and in touch with the earth. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namanda. Well, thank you, and thank you, Greg. We have in English wonderful expressions, I think, that fit in well with our Buddhist sense of being ecologists and with that logo, and that is to be in touch. And the Buddha is in touch. And the Buddha is well grounded. And so that logo is something that I thought it's so appropriate. And I'll talk about it a little bit later, but I wanted to start off. And you have the outline of the rough sequence of what we'll be doing today, And so I wanted to start off first with something that I was going to introduce later, but I think we can talk about it again later. And that is the Eco-Sangha resolution. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Eco-Sangha resolution that was passed by the BCA National Council. And it was in 2015. And it was approved by the BCA Ministerial Association the year before, 2014. And I want to read it because this is, my plan for today is to narrow in on this. This will be sort of the logical conclusion of this whole presentation. But if I start with it and end with it, maybe that would be good. So if you have it in front of you, you could follow along with me. And this is the resolution that was passed by our National Council. It says, whereas one of the major social issues of our time is a deep concern for the environment. And whereas with the core teachings of interdependence and compassion, our Buddhist religion is inherently ecological in vision and conservation oriented in practice. And whereas our Buddhist churches of America not only consume large amounts of resources in themselves, but also serve as a model for personal behavior in the homes of each of its members and society at large, therefore be it resolved that each BCA temple be encouraged to adopt policies that promote an awareness of the profound implications of our behavior on future generations and to promote ecologically friendly behavior in the spirit of Mottainai. Now, when we passed it on the district level, the Northwest District Ministerial Association first passed it before it was presented to the BCA Ministerial Association. And in that original formula, it did not have the spirit of Mottainai at the end. And when it was added by the Ministerial Association, the BCA Ministerial Association, I thought, what are you doing? You're introducing a foreign term. People aren't going to understand what Mottainai is. And I was initially kind of disappointed. And then later, as I'm thinking about it, I thought, that's a great talking point. You know, people will go and look up Mottainai. We can talk about what is the meaning of Mottainai. And as I've investigated it, there's actually a Mottainai movement. I don't know how active it is in Japan now, but there's a Mottainai movement in Japan. And as part of that movement, one of the things that it says, if you go on the internet and you look this up, and it says, in Japan, we want to make Mottainai a term that is adopted into every language so that it would become understandable in English. It would become understandable in Spanish. You would hear, no matter where you would go, you would hear that expression Mottainai. And actually it was used in the Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech by Wangari Maathai, who was from Kenya, and she won the Nobel Peace Prize for her environmental work in Africa generally. And so when she was visiting Japan, she heard this expression and she said, "That's what I'm talking about," as it was explained to her. And so she became the honorary head of this Mottainai movement. And then she passed away from cancer a number of years ago, but anyway, that's where we're heading. I want to investigate, to look at Buddhism, the various traditions of Buddhism, and how it really, to me, resolves itself in Joro Shinshu and Mottainai and Itadakimasu as kind of the heart, I think, of the Jodo Shinshu experience. And so how appropriate it is that it's in this Eco Sangha resolution, how happy I am that it's in this Eco Sangha resolution. In this country, I don't know if you know or if you've watched the what are called eco vids. Nobuko Miyamoto down at the Tenshin Temple, and she is a dance instructor and a Bonodori instructor down there, and she has created a Bonodori dance, Mottai Nai, and she has created this eco vid, which if you go, have you, I can't get a response, but I can see your hands if you raise your hands. Have you seen the her eco vid on the internet, Mottai Nai? How many of you have seen it? Oh, you've got to go to your computers when you get back and watch. She's made at least 3 now. One is BYO chopsticks, I think. Bring your own chopsticks because of the waste in wood, using wooden chopsticks, and she encourages using bamboo. And she came up to Seattle as part of our Eco Sangha activities, and she introduced her Eco Sangha, her Mottai Nai dance, and we had it as one of the dances that we did a few years ago at our Bonodori. But then she has, let's see, Cycles of Change, which is encouraging people to ride their bicycles. Or as I was preparing for this presentation, I was going through, I never throw anything away. So I'm going through all my notes, and what do I find last night but your Geppo newsletter from 2008, April 2008, and it's by an article by Glenn Hamamoto, and it's about him getting a motor scooter and how environmentally friendly it is. And it says interestingly, he says he looked at electric motorcycles. He said, oh, but they are not produced by any of the major manufacturers and are still not very reliable. This is 2008. And today we see e-bikes all over the place. And the electric vehicles are really, I mean, they're coming online. My neighbor has one. He just plugs it in. It's amazing the progress that's been made. But I thought how ironic that I found this last night from your 2008 Geppo. I understand Glenn Hamamoto is still using his motor scooter that he bought in 2008. I think Greg was telling me last night. So, but anyway, the Nobuko Miyamoto has these 3 eco vids, and they're really polished, really professionally done. So you have you can read what the best article I think I have found on the deeper meaning of Mottai Nai. People have said, oh yeah, I grew up with that expression. My mother would say, don't waste, don't waste. Well, it has a very deep Jodo Shinshu meaning to it, and that's where I want to go today and discuss today. But I put the best article, or the best little article that I've seen was by the late Reverend Yakumo, who passed away. He was at the Salt Lake City Buddhist Temple, his last assignment, and it's in a book called Namo Amida Butsu. And I hope you have that as part of your library. It's a wonderful book, and I wish it were republished. Mrs. Yakumo gave me the last 20 copies she had. She said, oh, I'm so happy that someone appreciates this book. She put it together along with her sons in kind of memory and to honor her husband after he passed away. But anyway, I on my outline, it says, the first I wanted to start with the meaning of the Eco Sangha, and that is an awareness, to cultivate an awareness among our members that to be a Buddhist is automatically to be an ecologist and a conservationist. And when I say ecologist, some people think, very narrow scientific study of forests and that sort of thing. But the word ecology has become broader and broader. It has taken on this life. You hear ecosystems or ecology of our office, at work, the ecology of the company, so it's broader. There's a book that was published, Ecology of the Mind. And so ecology, Buddhism has been called cosmic ecology, meaning universal sense of oneness, of interdependence, of mutual co-arising, of interrelatedness. This Sanskrit term that it's translated from, pratitya samutpada, is a very, very broad and inclusive term. But so when I say to be a Buddhist is automatically to be an ecologist, it's in that sense of cosmic ecology, universal relatedness, or sometimes we say oneness. And then, of course, being a conservationist is just an extension of that. It's, as we said in the resolution, Buddhism is a teaching of wisdom and compassion, not just wisdom, but it's putting it into action. So I want to express a deep appreciation to Kara Nakahoshi, who her husband is Kenji Akahoshi, who was the minister at the San Diego Buddhist Temple. And I've known Karen and Kenji for many, many years. And Karen grew up at the Spokane Buddhist Temple, and I was overseeing Spokane for many years as a minister. And we've had some interesting conversations, wonderful conversations. She's filled me in kind of on the history, the really remarkable history of the Spokane Buddhist Temple. And her father, her parents, and her mother just passed away not too long ago. She was over 100 years old. So, but Karen helped put together this Eco Sangha resolution, but she started the Eco Sangha at the San Jose Betsuin. And I was told when I went down there that that was the most active organization within the San Jose Betsuin. Unfortunately, some of the leaders have passed away, and it's last time I talked with Karen, she said it's become kind of dormant for lack of someone to take it over. And Karen has had a lot of tragedy in her family, and she's not in a position to assume a leadership position now, but she has been a very strong leader in the past. And I wanted to, and you have in front of you what she put together, and the San Jose Eco Sangha put together. They started in 2009, and their mission statement, I think, could be pretty much accepted by all Eco Sanghas. And she says, as the mission statement says, as Buddhists, the Eco Sangha of the San Jose Buddhist Church Betsuin recognizes that we are interdependent with all life. From this position of oneness, we ask what we can do for our environment. Our goals are to promote understanding of the inherent ecological nature of Buddhism, ecologically friendly behavior through the established guidelines, recognition of the profound implications of our behavior on future generations. Since future generations, since I know all of you have your own family situations, and I have, since I retired at the end of 2016, all my grandchildren have been born, 5 grandchildren since 2016, and the youngest are 2 twins, 2 years old, and the oldest is 7. And so they will have relatives growing up together. And I just wonder and worry about their future. As I know you, those of you with grandchildren and younger people in your family also worry. What does the future hold for them? And so that, along with just our concern for the present, is a profound motivation, I think, for us to cultivate the eco sanghas. When I started the eco sangha in the 1990s, and I got together with one of our members who was a graphic artist. His name was Kenji Tachibana, and he passed away a couple of years ago, but he did the graphics. And they're more than the logo. We have other graphics connected with the Eco Sangha. And we sent out a postcard, for instance, where we have, I'm going to hold this up. I don't know if, I hope you can see it. And it shows the Buddha's, his aura, and then in the earth touching posture. And I know you can't read it. It says across the top right here, it says, "The earth will bear witness." And this, along with the logo, we sent, this was actually an informational postcard that we sent out to people with information about the Eco Sangha. And I still have quite a few of them left if anyone wants one. And but the background of the logo goes to the story of Shakyamuni Buddha. When he attained enlightenment and he went through the temptations of Mara. And I'm sure probably most of you are familiar, most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with, first Mara sends his armies to try to scare Siddhartha. He's not Shakyamuni yet. So to scare Siddhartha, to dissuade him from trying to gain enlightenment. And Siddhartha is unmoved. He sits in meditation posture, unmoved by Mara's armies. And then he sends his daughters to try to seduce him. Oh, you don't want to do that, come with us and enjoy the pleasures of life. And again, Siddhartha is unmoved. And then finally he has doubt. He tries to sow doubt. And there's various accounts of this, various versions of it. But the Buddha, eventually he touches the earth and he calls upon, and Mara says, no one was with you. How can we know that you should be called a Buddha? No one was with you. You were in the forest by yourself. And the Buddha touches the earth and he calls upon the spirit of the earth. And the earth goddess rises up and says, I have been with him all along, and I will bear witness to his enlightenment. And so that's where this earth touching, the earth will bear witness. How we treat the earth, it will bear witness to whether we are fools or whether there's some sense of intelligence and wisdom in our life. So that's where. And I think it's such a great story. Some years ago, I don't know if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell, the meaning, what was The Power of Myth on PBS in the 1990s, I think. It was actually the most popular program on public television. And in there, Joseph Campbell talks about mythology, and he was interviewed by Bill Moyers. And then Joseph Campbell passed away just months after the interviews. But in there, he says, we need an earth myth. We need a myth that will help us to preserve the earth. And I remember yelling at the television at that time, we do have one. We have one already. It's the story of Shakyamuni Buddha touching the earth and calling on the earth to bear witness. So anyway, that's the meaning of our logo and the earth touching posture or mudra. And it's actually the statue of the Buddha touching the earth is one of the most, I think maybe after the meditation posture of the Buddha, that particular mudra is the most popular one that I've seen in Buddhist iconography. So I want to, after each section A, and then I have B, and then I have C, and I want to invite any comments that you might have, or any questions that you might have to talk about it now. The one last point I wanted to make is that it's not to be a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist is to be an ecologist. It's all of Buddhism. And I was hoping that this logo would be picked up by Buddhists of all denominations, because it's very hard to get Buddhists together. We don't even have a common holiday. You know, we have in the Mahayana traditions, we have Bodhi Day is separate, and Nirvana Day and Hanamatsuri and these. But in Vesak, in the traditions of the Southern Buddhists, those are all one day. The Buddha was born, enlightened, and died on the same date. And so we don't have that in common with them. We have only partial the Buddhist world that we can observe those holidays with. And so I thought, if we could have Earth Day as a common holiday for all Buddhists, because all Buddhists are automatically ecologists and conservationists. That's what it is to be a Buddhist. It's what it is to be a Jodo Shinshu Buddhist. It's what it is to be a Zen Buddhist. It's what it is to be a Theravada Buddhist. We had that in common. And on that basis, I think that would serve to really bring us together. So unfortunately, the only non-Jodo Shinshu Buddhist group that has joined is at Seattle University, and they're probably today they're the most active eco-Sangha group. And the head of their philosophy department is a Buddhist. He's a Zen Buddhist priest, but he has very, very close ties with the Seattle Betsuin and has deep admiration, I think, for Shinran Shonin. And so, but it is a Zen group, and they're very active at Seattle U, which, if you don't know it, is a Catholic university. So it's interesting that Jason Worth there is the head of the philosophy department and is doing Buddhist activities on campus with their eco-Sangha. But that's kind of the commitment of Seattle University, is diversity. And I think it still comes under the influence of their Archbishop Hunthausen, who passed away. But when I first came to Seattle in the 1980s, and Archbishop Hunthausen was still Archbishop, and as part of his 25th anniversary of being Archbishop of the Seattle Diocese, he had an interfaith celebration, and I was invited to participate, as were, I think, about 15 other religious groups. And he had it at the basketball pavilion for the University of Washington. It was big, and I realized how small we are as BCA when I think the number of people in the Archdiocese of Seattle outnumbers the total number of people in BCA. And I think what they spent on just that one activity was amazing. They had banners made for every religious tradition with the symbols of that tradition, and we marched in carrying our banners, and it was really quite a remarkable event. So, so Seattle University is one very active eco-Sangha, and I at 75, years old now. It's kind of hard for me to think about outreach. I just hope someone, some younger people in BCA see the value, I think, of eco-sanghas. And I'm hoping at some point, I don't have the technical knowledge to bring various eco-sanghas together. And but I know there are eco-sanghas, and I would invite people at various temples. I've done eco-sangha workshops at most of the Bay District temples over the years. I've done them at Coast District temples. But what excited me about coming to Fresno is it's the first outside of the Bay Area and the Northwest where I was invited to come and do an eco-sangha, and I didn't even realize that you have an eco-sangha there. So I'm really happy to see that and to meet you, even if it's remotely. So but when it becomes safe to travel, I definitely have to get down there, because my sister turns 80 in November. I was hoping to see her and kind of do an early celebration of her birthday, but it didn't work out. So now let me stop here, pause here, and invite any comments or questions that anyone has at this point.
Any comments or questions? Is your laundry done? Any comments or questions? I think that for us here in Fresno to, like I had told you before when we had heard that you were going to be our guest lecturer for our Ohigan lecture, and then it would be on eco-sangha, that we were very excited, because we're trying to do what we can, but I think what you shared with the San Jose Betsuline on ideas on how to be more sustainable, I think those kind of ideas that maybe some of the other temples, I know at the end of your outline you had said that to share what some of the other temples are doing, but I think, and perhaps later on or during your lecture today, what some of the Northwest temples or different ideas within our temples that we can start to adopt. And so BCA doesn't really have one overall, under one umbrella, eco-sangha. Each temple is responsible for their own. Is that true?
Yes. And I've been asked that question. Someone up at Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada, they wanted to start an eco-sangha up there, and they did something very remarkable, I'll tell you about. But he said, well, how do we join? And I said, well, I was working as a minister at the time. I don't have time to administrate an eco-sangha, keep track of it. I said, just identify as an eco-sangha, adopt the values of it, and you're an eco-sangha, and then share with us what you're doing. So they started it, and they shared. This is remarkable. I've got it over here. And I just talked with Izumi Sensei up there not too long ago, and their eco-sangha is going. He was very proud of the fact that they spent $120,000 to convert all of their, and it says it says, let's see, well, basically all these lights from 500-watt high pressure lamps to 60-watt LED lamps, and we are replacing our 22 outdoor 100-watt mercury pot lamps with LED retrofit lamps. It says the membership made a large financial commitment, more than $120,000 to meet these objectives. That's great? That comes out of I think that Buddhist awareness of wanting to do something, being involved, standing for something. Wow, that's great.
So this is what one of our members put together. And if you'll notice the logo, actually I was going to mention that too, this is perfect. So if there's not an umbrella BCA, then, and if each temple is responsible for their own Sangha, then as far as having our own logo, if you see the logo in the middle, that
Oh, yeah.
was created by one of our young members, Chloe Yoneda, Ruth Yoneda's granddaughter. And this was, she just created that this year for us because the Fresno Betsuin participated in the Fresno Interfaith Climate Alliance. We are part of the Fresno Interfaith Climate Alliance, and we had a seminar. And so for that particular one, we thought, well, maybe we should develop our own Sangha logo. And so Chloe Yoneda then created this beautiful logo for us using, some of the ideas from the one, was that the Seattle logo that similar to this?
The Seattle logo is,
San Jose?
oh, the San Jose. Well, I think the San Jose was using this one here.
Oh, okay.
Whoops, like the one, the
Yes.
touching posture, because Karen actually, as a fundraiser for San Jose, she took that logo and she put it on canvas bags, and they sold them as a fundraiser for their Eco Sangha. So, and she's the one who said, you really need to put the TM trademark symbol on there so that it doesn't get taken by some other group and it could be copyrighted or something, and we'd lose the ability to use our own logo. So.
And so with that in mind, then, is that all BCA temples can use
absolutely.
that logo touching the earth?
Yes. Matter of fact, I'll send you a poster that has its poster size if you want to use it.
Oh, you're breaking up a bit.
One of the I don't want to say disappointments, but one of the things that I would like to see in Hawaii is they're very active with what they call green honganji, and that's great. The only issue I have with the green honganji, and they use the earth touching posture, they emphasize that, and when he was Bishop, Eric Matsumoto sent out a statement that's very similar to what I've read about our mission statement, and it's a letter that was sent out. Let's see, and anyway, I'm sorry you can't see it, but it's very similar. But the name Green Honganji limits us to Honganji, and especially in Hawaii, you have the Tendai mission, you have the Joroshu mission, you have the Zen, and all of them. And if you don't emphasize Honganji, but emphasize to be a Buddhist, not just to be a Joro Shinshu Buddhist, but to be a Buddhist is automatically to be an ecologist and a conservationist. And that's what brings us together as Buddhists. Then we have our own, as I'll get to later today, our own sectarian approach, and Joro Shinshu approach really is quite unique. And but we say we are ecologists and conservationists. So we all share the vision that I will get to of interdependence, mutual co-arising, the pratitya samutpada.
Reverend Castro, we do have another comment or question.
Hi, I'm Connie Young, and I'm actually your neighbor. I'm a Unitarian Universalist, so our house of worship is right next door here. But just wanted to let you know that we have a program called the Green Sanctuary Program, which is quite similar, it sounds like, to Eco Sangha, but we do actually have it at the national level, and then the individual congregations can tap into that. So there are all kinds of resources available that you'd be most welcome to take a look at. And by the way, I really appreciate this conversation. You're kind of inspiring me because our little Green Sanctuary team has kind of gone by the wayside next door, and this is kind of inspiring me to maybe get it going again. And who knows, maybe we can collaborate. But the other thing is, Paula mentioned the Fresno Interfaith Climate Alliance that you belong to, we belong to, and they're linked into California Interfaith Power and Light, and that's another source of all kinds of good ideas for congregations. So thank you very much for doing this.
Yes, we have the Washington Interfaith Power and Light, and but the issues that they were focusing on, I didn't feel were well, I'll get to that later. Some of the issues that and the way in which certain things were emphasized. So I stopped going to their meetings, but it was Washington State branch of that interfaith interfaith. We need interfaith activities. That's certainly vital. Shall we go on then and go to section B? And I want to make sure we get to, because I have the culmination is the BCA, the Eco Sangha resolution, how to make sure we bring things to a conclusion with that. So in B, we have, just to talk about the concept of interdependence, which is it's a little bit too narrow. I mean, interdependence, mutual co-arising. I like that the expression mutual co-arising or interrelatedness, sometimes oneness. But I like mutual co-arising because, and I thought a lot about it with the tsunami and earthquake in Japan, and the question came up when it was March 11th, then the cherry blossoms were blooming, and here was this national disaster. And people said, how can we enjoy the cherry blossoms when all the, 17,000 people have perished? And someone said, the one doesn't invalidate the other. They mutually co-arise. Yes, disasters happen and cherry blossoms bloom. They're together. And so the sense of interdependence, one image that's used frequently, you'll hear it, Indra's net, that the god Indra, and this is in the Kegon Sutra, the god Indra has a net that stretches to infinity in all directions, and at the intersection of each strand of the net is a jewel, and that jewel reflects every other jewel, reflecting every other jewel, reflecting every other jewel. And so that's kind of a metaphor for the sense of interdependence. Everything is reflected in everything else. And I was thinking, you actually, if you take it further, it's all impermanent. That's the flip side of interdependence is impermanence. And so it's not just static, but all those jewels, all that net is changing as you're looking at it. And it's multidimensional. And so when you get that image in your head, it's really overwhelming. It's fukashigi. You can't conceive of how profound that is. And so, but I wanted to read to you something this is a real classic book. And I encourage you, it's just a short book, and it's by Thich Nhat Hanh, who passed away not too long ago. And it's his commentary, his translation and commentary on the Heart Sutra. And it's this book here. I wanted to read a little bit from it because it presents a view that would be shared by all Buddhists. And it's that sense of, it's kind of a delightful sense of the universal oneness. And he starts off, he says, if you are a poet, you will see clearly that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Without a cloud, there will be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. So the cloud is essential for the paper to exist. If the cloud is not here, the sheet of paper cannot be here either. So we can say that the cloud and the paper inter-are. Interbeing is a word that is not in the dictionary yet, but if we combine the prefix inter with the verb to be, we have a new verb, interbe. Without a cloud, we cannot have paper, so we can say that the cloud and the sheet of paper inter-are. If we look into the sheet of paper even more deeply, we can see the sunshine in it. If the sunshine is not there, the forest cannot grow. In fact, nothing can grow. Even we cannot grow without sunshine. And so we know that the sunshine is also in this sheet of paper. The paper and the sunshine inter-are. And if we continue to look, we can see the logger who cut the tree and brought it to the mill to be transformed into paper. And we can see the wheat. We know that the logger cannot exist without his daily bread. And therefore, the wheat that became his bread is also in the sheet of paper. And the logger's father and mother are in it too. When we look in this way, we can see that without all of these things, this sheet of paper cannot exist. Looking even more deeply, we can see that we are in it too. This is not difficult to see because when we look at a sheet of paper, the sheet of paper is part of our perception. Your mind is in here and mine is also. So we can say that everything is in here with this sheet of paper. You cannot point out one thing that is not here. Time, space, the earth, the rain, the minerals and the soil, the sunshine, the cloud, the river, the heat. Everything coexists with this sheet of paper. That is why I think the word interbe should be in the dictionary. To be is to interbe. You cannot just be by yourself alone. You have to interbe with every other thing. This sheet of paper is because everything else is. So when we try to return one of the elements to its source, suppose we return the sunshine to the sun, do you think that this sheet of paper will be possible? No. Without sunshine, nothing can be. And if we return the logger to his mother, then we have no sheet of paper either. The fact is that this sheet of paper is made up only of non-paper elements. And if we return these non-paper elements to their sources, then there can be no paper at all. Without non-paper elements like mind, logger, sunshine, and so on, there will be no paper. As thin as this sheet of paper is, it contains everything in the universe in it. And then he goes on to talk about emptiness. And he said, let's see, just one more paragraph. It says, and so the sutra, the Heart Sutra is told by Avalokiteshvara. So he says, when Avalokita says that our sheet of paper is empty, and emptiness is kind of at the heart of the Heart Sutra. And so he says, when Avalokiteshvara says our sheet of paper is empty, he means it is empty of a separate, independent existence. It cannot just be by itself. It has to interbe with the sunshine, the cloud, the forest, the logger, the mind, and everything else. It is empty of a separate self, but empty of a separate self means full of everything. So that's Buddhism. And whether you're Jodo Shinshu or Zen or whatever. And now I wanted to go on from here. Oh, yeah, this universal sense of self, I wanted to emphasize. I was thinking how that is the basis, I think, of art in Japan and in China is, they say to paint bamboo, you study bamboo, you become bamboo, and then you can paint bamboo. So that sense of oneness, I think, is what I just read is at the heart of even art, I think, in Japan. So I wanted to go on number 3. It says the starting point of Buddhism. And usually the starting point of Buddhism is said to be a statement that you find actually in Theravada Buddhism. And do you have a bonsho or the big gong that was given by Mr. Numata, I think, to most of the Betsuin? We have a gong up in Seattle. You have one too? Raise your hands if you.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there an inscription on the side of the gong?
Gordon.
Does it say something in English?
What was that again? Is there an
Inscription? Okay. On the side of our bonsho is written what is supposed to be as considered, when you talk about the Theravada Buddhist anyway, is the Buddhism in a nutshell, the essential Buddhist statement. And that is, it says, to do good and to avoid evil and to purify your mind. That is the teaching of all the Buddhas. That's what it says on the side of our bonsho. But anyway, look sometime. I wish I were there in person, then we could get better response. But anyway, that's on the side of ours, and I thought that's not the essential Buddhist affirmation, I think, from a Jodo Shinshu point of view. And certainly doing good I mean, it's not wrong, but I think there's a more essential and practical starting point of Buddhism, and that is the expression of dukkha, and the first noble truth of Buddhism. That is the starting point. And dukkha has no English equivalent, but the statement that I've heard that captures the essence of Buddhism most succinctly is, this and this only do I teach. What is the cause of dukkha and what is the elimination of dukkha? That to me is what Buddhism is all about. And this expression of dukkha, usually it's translated as suffering, but that's not a good translation. I mean, it is suffering, but it's that whole spectrum of unsatisfactory experiences that we don't want to have. And so it can be separation from loved ones. And I think if you extend it, it can be confusion, doubt, arrogance, dissatisfaction, dissonance. All of these are dukkha. The starting point of Buddhism is problems, essentially. And I remember when I first became a Buddhist back in the 60s, and someone said something that has carried all the way to today. They said, if you don't have problems, in other words, if you don't have dukkha, you don't need Buddhism. If you don't have problems, you don't need Buddhism. You've probably heard ministers say that over the years. And I love that expression. So the starting point of Buddhism is dukkha. And the first of the four, and I want to start and look at the Four Noble Truths from a medical point of view, because it is a medical model. Buddhism is based on this medical model of the Four Noble Truths. And whereas, if you look at, let's say, a religion like Christianity, it's based really on a legal model. You have the covenant or the contract with God, the Judeo-Christian tradition. You have God as a judge. You have commandments and laws. And if you disobey, you get punished. This is all legality, legal language. And in Buddhism, it's more of on a medical. So the Four Noble Truths expressed in medical terms would be, the first of the Four Noble Truths is symptom. You start with the symptom. And then you have a diagnosis, and why is there dukkha? Well, that's the thirst, the desire, the selfish desire, and the holding on of things. That's what causes dukkha. So, then the third is prognosis, and the last is the cure. So if you have a sense of selfishness and the sense of wanting to only satisfy yourself and this narrow-minded approach to life, it's going to lead to dukkha. This is what Buddhism is saying. And what you get into when you look at Mahayana Buddhism, which Pure Land Buddhism is a part of the Mahayana tradition, is you have this sense of oneness. And so the feeling of dukkha, the experience of dukkha, is something that, I've heard ministers say, oh, life isn't suffering. Life is just a bumpy road. You have your ups and downs. Yeah, you may have suffering, but there's ups and downs. But from a Mahayana point of view, and I think from a Jodo Shinshu point of view, when we overcome this sense of self, and we look at like what Thich Nhat Hanh was saying with, we are a part of other people's experience. Our true sense of self is more of a universal sense of self. So at the same time that my life might not be suffering, I might not be experiencing suffering, but there is suffering. Life is suffering. At any one point in time, I don't have to go far to go to find a hospital, and people who are suffering from gunshot wounds, who are suffering from cancer, who are suffering from a loss of family members. That's going on even while I'm physically feeling okay right now. And that the one doesn't invalidate the other. So at any one point in time, you have suffering. Suffering is part of life, but also happiness and pleasure is part of life. The one doesn't invalidate the other. And so in the kind of poetic vision, says if you are a poet, you will see that there's a cloud floating in the sheet of paper. If you are a Buddhist, you will see that life is suffering, but it's also, at the same time that it's suffering, it's also pleasurable, and it's also beautiful, and it's also happy. So all of those things are happening simultaneously. Now, as I go on, and I put a note to myself, don't over-intellectualize. Go back to the fact that Buddhism is a practical, problem-solving religion. And I'm investigating, I'm reading various books on this. Boy, some people really interpret this connection between Buddhism and ecology, or they analyze it. It's very, very intellectual, and there are a lot of things I don't even understand even after reading it. So that's why I like to start, even if you can't understand something that's complex, you can understand the Four Noble Truths. It's very practical. And to start a movement to get people to be active, it can't be over intellectualized. It has to be down to earth. It's like, you know, the communist movement, for instance, you know, from each according to their or to each according to their needs, from each according to their abilities. You know, that's the basis of communism. And it's so simple, it's so direct, you know. So you give what you can, you take what you need. That's what it's saying to people. Boy, that expression was very, very motivating. And I think if we emphasize, you know, yeah, it doesn't matter how we later interpret it, start with the Four Noble Truths. The earth is suffering. And that is the first of the Four Noble Truths. Taking life as a whole, the earth is in trouble. And what is the cause of it? It's human desire. Humans are bringing about the problems of the earth. And our mother earth is in trouble. And if we treat the earth as like a mother, then we will treat it very, very differently. Now, when you go on to number 6 here, in Mahayana Buddhism, we emphasize, you know, the Bodhisattva path. And in the Bodhisattva path, we talk about, you know, practice and the paramitas, the perfections, and compassion. And in that process, we are not just benefiting ourselves, we're benefiting others. So we've already talked about the breakdown of self and other. You know, there is no self apart from other. This is, again, what Thich Nhat Hanh was emphasizing. You know, the whole universe is all together. So if we benefit ourselves, we have truly to benefit ourselves is to benefit other. To truly benefit other, we benefit ourselves. We're one and the same. And from a Zen point of view, the Zen master Dogen, he emphasizes forgetting the self. You know, to study Buddhism, he says, to study Buddhism is to study the self. But to study the self is to forget the self. But to forget the self means we are awakened by the myriad of dharmas, meaning to forget the self means we see the self, as they would say in even Shingon Buddhism, to emphasize, to see the self in a kind of universal sense. This is what Mahayana Buddhism is about. And you know, in Joro Shinshu, Shinran Shonin talks about self-power, you know, and then he emphasizes tariki, other power. And other power is so often treated as something that's external, you know. Other power is external, some kind of external power. But remember, we're emphasizing non-duality. There is no ultimately, I mean, in a relative sense, there's internal and external, but in a universal sense, there is no internal and external. So what Shinran Shonin is saying is other power is other than, not other from, as if it's external, but it's rather other than self-power. You know, awaken to the power of Amida Buddha. And even in our gathas, a lot of times, you know, as we're singing, you know, it sounds awfully, an awful lot like we're treating Amida Buddha as something out there, you know. But we shouldn't think of him as external, but other than my narrow-minded, self-centered ego. So I put down here, Amida Buddha is non-self, informing us as selfish, self-centered, self-preoccupied human beings. opening us up.
Reverend Castro?
Yes.
Yes, and so if you saw, I had sent you a schedule of this morning's. I don't know if you did see it, but if this would be a good time to break for about a 15-minute break, would that be all right?
I was getting there. I was getting there. That would be wonderful. Thank you for doing that.
Yes, yeah, that we wish that you were here to enjoy the refreshments that we have. We have egg salad sandwiches and pastries and everything, and so we wish somehow, maybe in the future, there will be a way, if we were the Jetsons, to be able to get it to you, but if we could be back at about 11 o'clock, would that work out?
That would be perfect. I appreciate it.
Great. Before we break though, I would like to introduce you to Dr. David Yamaguchi. The Yamaguchi family is the one who is sponsoring our Fall Ohigan seminar today. And so David is here, and so we are so grateful to the Yamaguchi family for sponsoring your lecture today. And of course, that if you were here in person, it would be because of their sponsorship that would be possible. But we are very grateful to the Yamaguchi family for their sponsorship, and so very grateful. Thank you, David.
Is Dr. Yamaguchi a medical doctor?
I'm a dentist.
Oh, here
My
it is.
brother's. I'm a retired dentist, but my brother is a physician who's retired also. But he's going to Europe today, so he cannot attend.
And so, yes, David is a dentist, and his brother, Dr. Kent Yamaguchi, is a medical physician, but they're on their way to Europe today. And so, how exciting. And so, yes, the Yamaguchi family is an important part of our Betsui family, and we are so grateful. And so, when you come, hopefully before the end of the year, that you'll get to meet the Yamaguchis also, and to express gratitude for today. And so, we will see you about 11 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, please. There's Ruth's egg salad sandwich. From the Visalia Buddhist Church. And so we welcome you. We're so glad that you're here.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and we're so glad that
So it does keep them away. It's kind of weird, but it does its job. And you don't hear it. It's like a aluminum. So it doesn't hurt it. Unless you're like sensitive. You might try it. It could keep them away too. Standing up and found it on Amazon. We brought it to church and tried it out, and we all liked it. So we bought some. The church brought some. All right, help yourself. Plenty of stuff to eat.
Okay, well, you need to be honest. Don't. All right. Thank you so much. You got your Is it copycat? No, you go for copycat? They only got my body here. It's like,
Great.
I know, it's everybody who I know. Yeah.
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Especially that door. There'll be straight ahead all the time. Hey, Gary.
You know, I'm driving here.
Oh, in fact, yeah, I love and so did it every day, chili, yeah, chili, yeah. Well, I said chili dogs because she's gonna do for the neighborhood, she said, chili dogs.
Get your butt already, huh?
Yeah.
I'm the last one. I'm scheduled for the last one.
Yeah, I met her. Moving the table back.
Oh, no, why were you?
So when you're older, or is it just a big I I've been driving all over town.
Oh, no, I wanted to.
They're, yeah, and then on the way home, I said, I have a couple more. Arlene texted me, she says, mine's ready, so I'll text Arlene and say, I'll pick it up on the way home. Maybe, if she's home.
Here's a big.
Thanks for giving.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
We
well,
weren't sure.
You tested, I tested too today. Negative.
Maybe
Hunter.
it's that Seattle, that area.
I'm the last one. 11:30, right? 11:30 is the last one.
Yeah. I tested myself this morning on that.
Hi there.
Oh, yeah, you sent something out
Yeah.
about June?
I can't remember specifically.
For those people who I knew were on the donation list.
Yeah. We said
That
it's
were
high
here.
five. Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, well, I don't think. Everything's like blooming and, because right now it's kind of. I mean, it's dog.
I went to Texas. That's spur of the moment.
Things will be.
It must be.
That's when the Angels were still in Los Angeles Angels were still trying to qualify for the playoffs.
Oh,
Show they were. And I said one day, I said, well,
I went out to.
I went to LA and watched the Angels play with the Dodgers. And then I looked at the state and said, oh, they're going to be in Houston.
See where that blue cup is? That's
I think, yeah, so I'm gonna follow them.
Tractors are supposed to be.
Jumped on a plane. Well, I'm never going back there.
Maybe
Maybe let's know why.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody sitting here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Boy, it just shot the spirits out of me.
She left?
When I go, you know, I like to
She's
tour
from
around the city.
the other church.
Yeah, just walking from one block to another. Can't do this very long. Yeah.
Oh, I was hoping, well, you know, I know she went down to be with her daughter. I think of her, she helped my family, my dad so much when he was at San Juan Riots, and she was there helping her neighbor. But
I stayed inside as long as I could.
and I was wondering how she
I
was.
tried to read every single
But you
thing.
haven't been able to stay in touch with her. I'm sad because that she is the amount of water.
Really,
That
really.
is,
3 years ago, she fell,
Cloudy, right?
fractured her bone
Oh, uh-huh.
and her hip bone.
Oh,
So we got that fixed. And then
Well,
she
he's got
was
still
sent to
turning, huh?
Pacific Garden for rehab.
13.
Now they
So
this
he
year.
gains in used to.
I know.
Daughter
They lost
had
11 to 3, 11 to 12.
and then finally they put the bullet.
Then I went to,
And I
and I
was
drove
cut
to
off.
Dallas.
My blood pressure is high,
sorry,
161.
you know.
I'm out of one medication. I don't know if that was
I don't know.
I'm Jesus.
I'm in there talking about
Which, no, I really have to learn to.
Well,
I went to Houston.
I was married and divorced, but I was married to kill me and my husband and son. But we've been divorced since 1980. So, yeah. But I remember, well, Judy was very,
Called the Angels.
I think a friend from
Houston.
Houston.
Oh, my God.
And
Houston.
it's,
What's it
when my dad was at
They're lost.
Sangha, taking care of
It was so hot.
and she was so kind. She was there every day, just like, you know, we were there helping my dad, and she was there with Victor. And,
You need to be 104.
I think
It's
of
like
her.
the heat index is like.
Every time we show that,
You've been
Fresno,
uh-huh.
I found the rest.
Because I
And
you're right.
like I'm late. I'm sure.
QR code.
It is. So and I don't know her daughter. I met her one time at Sangha Gardens. Her daughter came and I met her during but I just know that she was too old time candidate. She was so wonderful.
So it's on Zoom.
Our family, in fact, when my mom and I well, we had everybody was so nice. We did 2 years of actually because my dad had dementia. So we didn't want him to go to the regular dental service. So we thought had immediately, just Brett will show you that. My mom passed there. So my dad
The old days.
we had the regular service. Judy was so nice. She says, I'll stay with your dad. So Judy says, I'll take charge of Georgie and I'll be there for you. So we didn't have to.
The office, the floors and the classroom are beautiful. Have you seen them? Oh my gosh.
I just thought I would ask because I know how close you were. And, you know, I think of her.
They turned out really nice.
As we all get older.
I know.
And,
I know.
when I think of her.
Either that or we clean all the junk.
I'm for that combination.
All the Donna's junk.
Oh.
Thank you.
Trying to give it away.
Oh.
Isn't able to sell it, Project Donna.
I thought automatically some of that stuff got.
Joe, how are you?
Fine. How are you doing?
Good.
How are you, Hunter? You had a good,
No more pause.
good. How many did you have?
Salvation Army. Goodwill.
How many do you hope for?
Just trying to get it.
We like to have, you know, 15,
Across the street, yeah, Temple, there's a reality.
No, for my granddaughter.
It is so big store.
Oh, they did. Oh, yeah. Oh.
So what did you learn so far? collecting that you have material full of stuff. I mean,
And then I came and have
Stuff that we were trying to give away.
Oh,
Took kids to the peak stores and pulled it.
you like it?
that's one of my favorite echo songs. Conservation.
Well, summer break was really nice. It's a summer break. You know, I mean, even from Tai Chi to have the Mondays off and everything. Yeah, Bob and I, it was wonderful. We went to see, we saw Lady Gaga.
Oh, you did?
Oh, I'd go and see her again.
Really?
Have you seen her?
Not in person.
Yeah. Oh, she's fabulous. And it was her jazz and piano concert. And so she didn't sing a lot of her hits and everything. That's another concert. So I'd like to go to that one too. You know, she just, she gives 150%. I said, I ran out of the number of times she changed her costume. I mean, that's a lot of work, you know, but she just, and her talent, I mean, and to hear her voice in person, it's like amazing. Yeah.
What does it cost to see
It's amazing. I think those were $550. But we were like 10 rows from the stage.
Oh,
Yeah, it was really nice.
500.
I know.
Yeah. And it was, it is anymore. It's just not your $100. I know. It's amazing. When they were there too, they were on the TV, the Legion thing, the radio thing. 600. I said, how many people, you know, for the season, you want to go more than, you know, a concert is a one-shot thing, but if you're going to go for the season, yeah. I want to take everything home and wash it at home, but, I mean, well, they could go into the thousands.
We couldn't go. We were behind the stage. We were kind of like, if the stage was right there, we were like,
Oh, right on the edge.
and you know,
But Vegas is fun.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd rather be clear of
Yeah. You know, for Fresno, it's a really easy trip. You know, it's only 45, 50 minutes to fly, and you're right there, and once you're there.
Usually I would only go because of
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't go just for it.
Yeah.
I did when I was a lot
it's
younger.
still $100.
Yeah.
Different. I can tell when I'm watering the garden. Oh, I almost tripped. We're going in November to the Fox Theater in Isaiah. There's a group called
Snow there.
Oh my
They're
God.
from Russia, and they
And you had to walk from,
yeah, their tribute band. It's supposed to be really good. So
either it's too hot or too cold, huh?
one of my friends
Oh
said
my
that
God.
they, you know, they watch them on
I
YouTube
think,
and everything.
oh, but we looked out because it just had the
I
flash
think it's
flood.
only $40.
That was crazy, huh?
It's like, yeah, we gotta, I mean, after,
Well,
I should have been a strawberry first.
So when you were still really busy July and August with the church, did you have to do a lot here? Because I know, you were saying it was a nice break, but I know you always have.
I just cleaned the windows.
Oh, thank you.
a bag that I left here.
I did.
Which comes, oh, that one, which is an open.
Well, Reverend Castro, we hope that you were able to have a little break
Well, if
too,
church is
and
tomorrow, so you probably could get it.
we'll go ahead and invite everyone
Am
back.
I here today?
And if I may also, I want to thank you. I know it's, the topic really is Sangha, but then your Dharma message to us is really appreciated. And of course, you know, to be able to express Sangha, of course, through the Dharma, and then to go in deeper into the Dharma also with your lecture today is very much appreciated. And so we will look forward to this next part of your lecture. Thank you.
One thing that I noticed that I skipped over, and you see it in your notes, is experiencing others' dukkha as your own. And something that's fascinated me, and I've actually seen if there's any research on it, there's very little research on cringing. But isn't cringing kind of experiencing others' pain or distress as your own when you cringe? And what surprised me, the research that's been done, is when we cringe at what we have done, you know, in a sense, you're standing outside yourself and looking at yourself and saying, "Ooh, I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done that," you know. But I can remember, and what I think what interested me in cringing is, I remember a number of us were standing and watching a dog when it darted out into the street and got hit by a car. And I just remember that very visceral feeling of cringing, knowing that the dog was going to get hit by the car, and you're identifying with the pain of others. And a few years ago, I remember encountering the idea of a mirror neuron in the human brain, that and I'm wondering if those tie together, you know, that the mirror neuron is what enables us to identify with the other as ourself. Anyway, that's something I wanted to touch on a little bit. I noticed I didn't say anything about it. But cringing, you know, anyone who's doing any research, psychological research on cringing, let me know. I'm going to the next page now, and ecology and conservation from a Jodo Shinshu point of view. And first part, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Japanese Buddhist environmentalists, and since I don't read Japanese or speak Japanese for that matter, I'm not familiar with the big picture of what's happening in Japan, except how it's being related in English by people like Dr. Duncan Williams down in Southern California. And he's done a lot of writing, and he edited Harvard University's book on Buddhism and ecology. But there's what I've encountered recently, and this is a book that is published by a Dharma Cloud publishing company, which is, let's see, you can't see it, but I'll there it is. It's
Right there.
the Buddhist philosophy of symbiosis. And Japanese environmentalists, Buddhist environmentalists, they talk about in human evolution, or in not just human evolution, but in evolution generally, they said the first stage is parasitism, that the parasitic and the um, uh, early animals were parasitic animals, but they found that they were wiping out, that they couldn't exist without, because they were wiping out the others, which resulted in their being wiped out. So the next stage in evolution would be symbiosis. You have to, in some way, not just draw from others, but benefit others as you're benefiting yourself. So symbiosis is that sense of what they say, harmony. They're interested in harmony, sustainability. You can sustain your population as long as there's a balance, a harmonious balance. You give to them and they give to you. And that's what harmony is about. And and of course, with parasitism, what they're saying in modern society, we live in a parasitic society. We're drawing from nature, but we're not giving back. And that's not sustainable. So again, it goes back to benefiting self, benefiting others, which, you, I'm sure have what Jishin Kyoninshin to teach, to learn the Dharma yourself, as Shinran Shonin says, and to help others. I mean, that's a specific Jodo Shinshu context, but it really applies to everything. In order to sustain others' life and your own life is to benefit self, benefiting others, and to break down that distinction between self and others. So the problem that everyone points to in books like the IBS publication of on Buddhism and environmentalism is this one, edited by Dr. Richard Payne, who recently retired from IBS. Let's see. Wait. Sorry. I thought it would come in more clearly. Anyway, you're familiar with this. I hope you have a library there at the Fresno Betsuin. It's called How Much is Enough? Buddhism, Consumerism, and the Human Environment. And it's a number of essays in here from mostly from a Jodo Shinshu point of view. Then there's this one, edited by Stephanie Akaza, who also contributed an article to the other book. It's called Hooked, Buddhist Writings on Greed, Desire, and the Urge to Consume. This is just two books on Buddhism and ecology. And there are tons of books. I mean, there's just so much material that's been published on Buddhism and conservation, Buddhism and ecology. And so, of course, the problem that they point to is greed and the desire and the urge to consume. Now, going on to B, the Bodhisattva makes certain vows, the 4 Bodhisattva vows. Dharmakara Bodhisattva in our Jodo Shinshu tradition makes 48 vows, but there are 4 essential Bodhisattva vows. And actually, we sing these vows in our service book. We have the Shiguzegan, and it's I just happen to have our Buddhist service book. I don't know if you're still, you're probably not using this one still. Do you use this one or another service book? Anyway.
I'm using another service book.
Okay. I don't know if you have the Shiguzegan, but I can remember when I first became a minister, we were singing this. And when I was in San Francisco in the 1970s, and it's still in our service book today. You might remember the melody, Shujo Mugen Segando On Shinshu Sei Na. You remember that melody? Nishiru Zegon? I don't hear it very often, but it's the four vows, which are sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Desires are endless. I vow to end them. The gate of Dharma is boundless. I vow to master it. The Buddha way is supreme. I vow to attain it. So these are the vows of the Bodhisattva, and the fundamental four vows of a Bodhisattva. Then you can go on. Every Bodhisattva makes many other vows as well, like Dharmakara Bodhisattva, Hozo Bosatsu makes 48 vows, and Samantabhadra, I think there's around 40, 50 vows. One of Samantabhadra's interesting vows is he said, when at the end of my life, I want to be born into Amida's Pure Land. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's because that's the basis of Kegon Buddhism. Anyway, these vows are fundamental to the Bodhisattva and to the practice of the Bodhisattva way. This is a big part of other denominations of Buddhism. For instance, in the Tibetan tradition, the Dalai Lama talks about universal responsibility. He says every day when he gets up, he thinks about his responsibility to all sentient beings in all universes, he says. But in Jodo Shinshu, we don't even take the precepts, and I think it's a very honest approach. And I was questioned why even the basic 5 precepts that most Buddhist organizations, when you go there, they start their service with the taking of the 5 lay precepts. And going back to Thich Nhat Hanh, he kind of has his version of the first precept. The first precept is aware of the suffering caused by the destruction of life. I vow to cultivate compassion and learn ways to protect the lives of people, animals, and plants. I am determined not to kill, not to let others kill, and not to condone any act of killing in the world, in my thinking, and in my way of life. Now, I think in Jodo Shinshu, we recognize the problem of that statement. And when I read the quote from Thich Nhat Hanh's book about the oneness of all life, if you're a cloud floating, or if you are a poet, you'll see clearly that there's a cloud floating in the sheet of paper, and without the cloud, until the whole universe is in the sheet of paper. So we're all, profoundly connected, and we're all interdependent. But I think Jodo Shinshu recognizes the problem in that statement. And so I like to take it a step further, and that is to live interdependently. So far, that's what we've said. But to live interdependently means to live at the expense of other forms of life. And I think we can't help it. That's the human condition. We can't help but live at the expense of other forms of life. Even living harmoniously, we're still in the picture. And just to be in the picture means we're living at the expense of other forms of life. Some years ago at Seattle Betsuine, we had a visit from a Vietnamese Chinese group that came to visit us in a bus. And they had also visited a vegetarian restaurant. They had their lunch at a vegetarian restaurant. And they asked us about being vegetarian. And we said, well, we're not necessarily vegetarian. We have nothing against it, but we don't take that precept. But doesn't mean that we want animals to suffer, but we realize that we can't help but live at the expense of other forms of life, even if we're a vegetarian. And so all the soybeans that they were, consuming in their tofu, the soybeans are raised. Let's say, I know there's a lot of clearing of the Amazon rainforest so that they can raise agricultural products or grazing land for cattle. And so, even if we're vegetarian, the fact that we're raising vegetables, we have to kill animals in order to raise the vegetables. Even clearing the land is killing the animals. And I think Jodo Shinshu sensitizes us to that fact that we can't help it. And so I was talking with actually the head of the Seattle University Eco Sangha, Dr. Jason Worth, and we were talking about this, and he said, they drove here in a bus. Well, where did the oil come from? Well, it was drilled, and we have oil spills. It was, it was at the expense of other forms of life to procure that oil. What about the clothes that we wear? There's no end to this understanding that we are living at the expense of other forms of life. And this brings us to that sense of motai. We can't help it. I'm so glad that in your logo, you already have motai. So I know you've been talking a lot about it and have an awareness of that. And it's not that we relish taking other forms of life. But there's a humility in that, and a kind of self-criticism, you might say. Who do I think I am? Do I think I deserve this? No, I don't. It wasn't put here for me to consume. I am taking it for my own selfish purposes. But as Yakumo Sensei says, so my responsibility is not to waste that. And I think this is something that when I started as a minister at the San Francisco Buddhist Temple, at that time, even the board of directors meetings, half of them were in Japanese. There were a lot of old timers who didn't speak English. And so the proceedings of the board meeting would have to be translated for them. And a lot of them growing up in poverty and in farming conditions, they almost subsistence living, they didn't waste. And we had a room that was off the social hall at the San Francisco Buddhist Temple that when I went in there, you would see newspapers bundled carefully, piled floor to ceiling, and then tofu containers all washed out carefully, stacked inside each other, floor to ceiling, and then the styrofoam clamshell containers all carefully washed, stacked floor to ceiling. The room was full. They couldn't put anything else in there. And last time I was in San Francisco, I was telling them about this, and I went over to that room, and there's nothing there now. They realized you can't do it. We live in such a wasteful society. But it was so admirable to me that they had that value, that sense of mottainai. And I think to cultivate our Jodo Shinshu temples, I would like to see us really emphasize that, and to go back to the values of the Issei. My wife is from Hawaii, and her mother is a Issei, and is actually an atomic bomb survivor recognized by the Japanese government. She's in Japan now, actually 96 years old. She was teaching school in Hiroshima when the atomic bomb blast happened. And just by the way the building collapsed, she was in the teacher's lounge. She was able to survive, but she had, the shards of glass from the exploding windows that had to be removed from her back. And, she was just very fortunate to have been able to survive. And then, ends up living in the country that bombed Hiroshima. That's so ironic. I think a lot of the ministers that I've worked with over the years, from Ogui Sensei, who was the first Rinban in Seattle, I was in the Japanese Air Force at the end of the war, and someone told me, although he never told me directly, that he was in kamikaze training at the end of the war. And then he ends up living most of his life in this country. And but the values of that generation, for them to create that room has always impressed me. And that sense of mottainai, of humility and not entitlement. And so when they would say itadakimasu, it wasn't itadakimasu. I hate that when I hear that. And people are so flippant and glib about itadakimasu. It means I humbly receive, and there's no humility in that statement. We should be very mindful of what we're doing when we say itadakimasu. And so I'm at the end of B. Any feedback or any stories, any questions that anyone has?
When you share your stories about San Francisco, and truly, I think even now they are very, as far as their sustainability practices, what they do is very admirable. And someone had just visited the San Francisco Buddhist church, the temple, and they were saying how after they ate, they would scrape whatever, and then they have the receptacles to recycle or to compost. And so I think San Francisco Buddhist Temple is another one that could be a source of what are you doing, that we can try to bring to ours. It was a Girl Scout project that they have the composting bins, and so we have that. And then the latest Girl Scout project was a garden, and so to have that at our temple too is to encourage our younger people too to participate in what's important. Because, like you said, it's, for the grandchildren, for this next generation, for generations after us, is why we need to be responsible now. And I want to quickly share, I received an email from someone back east about, oh, we're Buddhist and we'd like to know if you would like to support their organization. And she says, since we don't eat meat, she says we don't eat meat, and so we want to see. And so I emailed her back and I said, oh, we're Jodo Shinshu. I said, we do eat meat. She emailed me back, and I could tell the shock in her voice was like, well, then how can you call yourself a Buddhist? And I don't think I responded to that. But then, so I appreciate that as human beings, that and living our lives as human beings, that we don't really have that choice of not protecting all sentient beings, whether, you know, even if you're a vegetarian or whatever, that we do have to do that. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. But so thank you. Any other comments or that you've heard, or maybe some of? Okay, thank you.
One of our members was approached the same way. I thought you were a Buddhist, and here you are eating meat. They said it in a restaurant. And you know what his answer was? I didn't say I was a good Buddhist. So, yeah, it takes us back to, I mean, some people have said we shouldn't say we're evil. You know, they don't like that idea that, you know, as Shinran Shonin is saying, you know, we are evil people driven by blind passions. But, you know, you talk with a cow and they look at us and they go, that's evil. You cultivate us to eat us. And how can you say that's anything but evil? You know, so we are driven by blind passion. But that doesn't mean we should eat the cow. We should be, I think that the spirit of Mottainai makes us, you know, whereas I think the emphasis in Buddhism on being selfless, I think in Jodo Shinshu, it's on being self-effacing. And when you're self-effacing, you recognize the tenacity of the self, and you're constantly, in a sense, that's the humility. You're in a way, I don't want to say you're putting yourself down, but yeah, you're of course the flip side of that is gratitude. You know, I am grateful for this food. Itadakimasu. I'm grateful, and yet I can't repay fully what I have received. So there's the humility and gratitude and the sense of responsibility. My responsibility, as Yakumo Sensei really emphasized, is to, if I'm going to consume that animal flesh, then my responsibility is to turn it into enlightened action. And yet, Mottainai, I know I can't even do that. Let's go on to C, and then we can have a more general discussion. We're getting kind of late here. I just wanted to, you know, I've had so many experiences on interfaith panels and things like that. Some characteristics of Buddhist environmentalism contrasted with kind of theistic religions, and I would say one difference, and maybe not. Well, I hate to talk about Christianity as one homogeneous whole, because there's Christian fundamentalism, and then there's Christian, what mainstream Christian, more liberal forms of Christianity, and to me they're almost like two different religions. You know, fundamentalists think very, very differently about things than let's say an Episcopalian. I had a friend who was an Episcopalian minister whose library was divided into Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy. He was really incorporating a lot of Eastern thought into his thought. And there's been a lot of dialogue, I think, between um, the more liberal sides of Christianity and Buddhism over the years. But anyway, certainly you can say Buddhism is ecology. Most of the time I see Christianity as, well, Christianity and ecology, you know. The one big difference that I've seen is in how animals are considered and the treatment of animals. And so in the Buddhist texts, you always see all sentient beings. May all sentient beings gain enlightenment. The Bodhisattva will come back lifetime after lifetime until even the blades of grass attain enlightenment. That's so not just human beings. And I was on a panel once with a Catholic priest, and I was talking about this and the spirit of Mottai Nai Itadakimasu. And when it came to be his turn, he said, well, God put the animals here for us to eat. We don't have to apologize to them. And I just went, oh my gosh, what a difference in perspective. So that's, like I said, I don't think all Christians would say that, but certainly that was shocking to me. And we're seeing how intelligent animals are. The experiments down at Stanford University with the gorilla, Coco the gorilla, do you remember? And I think Coco was taught 300 and something sign language. And many of the things that were expressed were emotional. I think the Christian point of view is, well, animals don't have souls. That's why we can kill them. It doesn't, just because they don't have souls in the way they define it, doesn't mean they don't have feelings and that they express fear and even grieving. We've seen elephants, for instance, when an elephant has died and the other elephants gather around and they show emotion. And I've never seen an animal that, if they're attacked, doesn't flee in fear or fight to preserve its life. So the other thing that I think is very, very important, and it's a big difference between fundamentalism and Buddhism, is the attitude that all these problems that we're experiencing today, there is a divine plan. God has a plan for us, and God will work things out. So don't worry. There's this divine plan, and it's in God's hands. And that kind of attitude reduces our sense of responsibility, or maybe even eliminates our sense of responsibility for what we're doing to the earth. So that's a real different sense. And it's all in the Bible. It's all in the Bible. And a kind of anti-scientific attitude that fundamentalists have. They don't trust science. And as we've seen in the pandemic, the findings of medical science and the recommendations of medical science are just ignored, and often it's religious reasons. And some of the biggest outbreaks of COVID have been at fundamentalist gatherings, at fundamentalist churches that have even disobeyed the law against gatherings. One in Reading and one in Oregon, where there were big outbreaks of COVID after they had an illegal gathering of their members. And there'll be, I think, and there probably already are books being written about this phenomenon. But I've thought, the reason I think they're anti-scientific is if you apply scientific methods to the study of their religion and their rationale for the biblical interpretations that they have, if you had strict scientific analysis of that, you would find that they're completely wrong in their interpretation. So anyway, let's see. And then, of course, in one of the big controversies in Christianity is the kind of tension between those who follow the idea that the Bible teaches that we have dominion over the earth. And the people who are more environmentally responsible, they interpret it as stewardship compared to the Buddhist kind of self-effacing attitude of humility. I don't know if there's been any housing project where we've had stewardship over the housing project that has been all that successful. Stewardship often leads to a lot of mistakes and favoritism. So I'm not sure we would be that good of stewards of the earth, but anyway, that's a challenge, I guess. And then the last thing is, you're not finding much discussion of overpopulation. And to me, and to a lot of people, that's a major problem. The United Nations has come up with 17 sustainability goals. And I've participated in some interfaith discussion on these goals. I belong to an organization called Negative Population Growth, and they issue a lot of papers, research papers. One of the best statements I've heard is in regard to the 17 sustainability goals of the United Nations. They said every one of those goals will be impacted by overpopulation. When I look at my life, I was born in 1947. The global population at that time was somewhere around 2 billion people. And in my lifetime, I've seen it go from 2 billion to 8 billion. We just reached, I think, earlier this year, 8 billion global population is not sustainable. And I think this is what people who are engaged in population issues are aware of. And what they're saying is, there are a lot of religions that will disagree with this and don't consider overpopulation a major issue. And the Pope Francis wrote a book on Catholicism and the environment, and in there he talks about the need for sustainability, the need of people to curb their rampant desires. But then he addresses overpopulation. He said overpopulation is not really a problem. You've got to address these other things, and don't be so concerned with overpopulation. So I think, and I have a friend actually, even on such a liberal campus as Seattle University, he says that's a no topic on campus. People are not talking about overpopulation on Catholic university campuses. So I think that's a big difference between Buddhism, which does not have a problem with, we're a problem-solving religion. If we see overpopulation as a problem, then it needs to be addressed. So anyway, those are some of the points that I think Buddhism is, different, I think, than other religions. Actually, when I was at the Washington Interfaith Power and Light, the first meeting I went to, and they were talking about the issue of carbon dioxide and internal combustion engines as being the big source of the problem. That's what we really have to address. That's the elephant in the room that we're not talking about. I remember someone saying that's internal combustion engines this was in the early 2000s. Internal combustion engines was the elephant in the room we're not discussing. And I raised my hand and I said, I think the elephant in the room that we're not discussing is overpopulation. And no one said anything except one person, and that was the Jewish representative. He said, yay, thank you for touching on that. So anyway, that's the end of my outline. And we've got a few minutes left still before noon. I think we're scheduled, if it's a 2.5 hours allotted, I think we're scheduled to go until noon. We don't have to, but if anyone has any questions or final comments or anything.
I think you covered it so well, and you gave us so much to think about. We are really grateful. I understand too that you wrote a song, Precious Earth.
Oh gosh, I told Kemi Nakabayashi that I was going to introduce that, and that was going to be during the discussion period, of things that we do, at various temples as Eco-Sangha activities. And we have an Earth Day service every year, and in connection with that, we have a music service also. So it's a Earth Day music service, and then in the fall we also have a music service, and we sing the Jusei or we sing the Sambutsuge rather than chanting it, and everything is musical in nature. But Kemi Nakabayashi, who is the BCA music coordinator, and she wrote a Precious Earth, and I don't know if you've seen the book that she put together, Sing Namo Amida Butsu. Hey, it actually came out. Sing Namo Amida Butsu. And then there is now is Precious Earth. And I don't know if I could sing it because it's a little bit complicated, but I'll at least read the lyrics. And the lyrics were composed by Matthew Lee, Alex Sakamoto, Brent Tosaya, Reverend Don Castro, and Kemi Nakabayashi. And so this is a very good Gatha book. It says, precious earth, keep it green, mindful care, think rebirth, water pure, soil rich, fresh clean air, are needed so. Where did it come from? Where will it go? Take great care so all may grow. Okay, I'm losing it. I gotta read the rest. So where did it come from? Where will it go? She took that from I challenge the Dharma School students. I said, a good meditation for you is before you throw anything away. I'm so glad you see you have that you're board with all where everything comes from and where it's going. Where did it come from? Where will it go? Take great care so all may grow. We must work to preserve. If we don't conserve, in our haste, there will be waste. Changing balance, polluting the earth. How can we live in harmony? Think of generations to come, to have water pure, soil rich, fresh, clean air. In a spirit of Mot Dainai, let us strive to work to be sustainable. Beauty always is our wish for Mother Earth to glow.
That is beautiful. And in 2 weeks, we are going to have a Nembutsu gathering, and the theme is music. And the music from the BCA committee that they have created, so much of the music, and then now we will share Your Precious Earth. And so do you have a copy of the song? A link that you could send to us?
I will talk with Kemi and see what she says about that. They're very.
Yes, if you could do that, because
I certainly will. I'll let her know. And she lives only about a mile from me, and I am the great beneficiary of her garden. She's introduced me to Japanese cucumbers and also French breakfast radishes, which I was always adverse to eating radishes, and they are so good, wonderful. So they gave me a bag of radishes, and oh, they're great.
did you say French breakfast?
French breakfast radishes. And they're really mild and juicy, and they make a great radish for salads. Matter of fact, I went out and bought seeds, and I was thinking to myself, when I get back from Fresno, I'm going to plant those radishes because it's 25 days to maturity. And I thought that would be terrific for my grandson to see. You know, I was going to plant some over at their house too. And, you know, he could really watch them grow. He already has something in the window. The seeds are sprouting. He's only 7 years old. So you get that sense of growth, you know.
Well, thank you for sharing.
Go ahead.
Interestingly, and I don't know where it came from, my 7-year-old grandson is a vegetarian. And none of the rest of the family is vegetarian. His parents aren't vegetarian. But where he got this, I have a feeling he got it at school. And so he has been a vegetarian since he's 5 years old.
Wow, that's wonderful. And so the garden then is very important to him.
Yeah, yeah. And sugar is too.
Well, that is wonderful. And back to Kemi, she is aware of the Nembutsu gathering and our music workshop that we are doing, because we have 2 members of the BCA Music Committee here in Fresno, and they're coordinating our music workshop with her. And so what we're trying to do, because Greg, once again, will be our technician. Greg is the only one here in Fresno that has the advanced capability to be able to do all of this. I mean, seriously, it's a big responsibility for Greg, and you know, we're constantly asking him, and he's so wonderful about sharing his talents with us. But I don't know what we do without Greg. But so we're trying to obtain all of the original links to the music so that we can play it for our music gathering. And so Kimmy is already aware that the Fresno Betsuine is working on this. And so if we could get a copy of Your Precious Earth, that would be wonderful. So does anyone have any other comments or questions for Reverend Castro? Reverend Castro, did you kind of just want to wrap up before I thank you once again?
You know, when I was down in California, because you have drought so often, and I was talking about things that we do in Seattle, like for instance, we installed up-to-date dishwashers so that people don't, have styrofoam cups and all that sort of thing. And so when I was in LA, a woman came up and she said, well, we have a drought. We can't be washing all of our dishes. And what I said was, it's the spirit that counts. Make it appropriate to what your situation is. In Hawaii, actually, the Green Honganji, when I was there, they said they gave everyone a bag. You could purchase a bag, and it's a green bag, and it says Green Honganji on it. And in the bag are chopsticks and a napkin that it's all reusable. They use it over and over, and they take it home, and they bring their own cup, and they bring it home. That's what works for them. They also engage in worm composting, which is we actually had a workshop with them, a BCA sponsored workshop. It was through the Social Welfare Committee and through Green Honganji, and it was via Zoom about a year or so ago. And in there, one of the Zoom workshops was worm composting, and they had experts, and we had people from Canada, from all over. And they were saying, well, how do the worms survive the winter in Canada? And it was a real interesting discussion. But that was one, and also the forever chemicals. Our own Ron Hamakawa, who is in food services, and he was talking about these forever chemicals that are really in the news now, that so many things are lined with, and how dangerous they can be for people. I hope we can have more seminars and really get the publicity out, and even if it's via Zoom, to keep people from having to travel, it can be very effective, I think. And also to inform each other what we're doing. Like you said, what is San Francisco doing? What is Seattle doing? And what's appropriate for our situation there? For instance, everything we have at our Bonodori, just so much that we use, containers and everything. Ron, who's the head of our Bonodori committee, he works with an organization called Cedar Grove Compost, and everything we buy through them. It's biodegradable. Even like sushi trays, everything is biodegradable. Then at the end of the Bonodori, that goes into these special containers. Cedar Grove comes, picks it up, and takes it out to their composting facility and turns it into compost. Now, not everybody has that ability, but that works, and for us. And it was so effective that our Bonodori committee received an award from the city of Seattle, along with a monetary presentation for innovation as part of our Seafair activities. Our Bonodori is part of Seafair, which is very broad activities over a number of weeks that go on in Seattle. So that was great to see Ron as a leader of our, of our composting and all. It's really great to have someone like that. And I was, like I said, when I talked with Karen Akahoshi, I was sad to hear that people have passed away, and their Eco Sangha isn't active as it was before. At one time, being the most, as I was told, being the most active group at the San Jose Vetsuine, as I think it should be. They would have at their Earth Day service, afterwards they would go to the gym, and there would be displays and demonstrations in the gym. Matter of fact, I have something. One of the most fascinating demonstrations I saw at the San Jose between Earth Day program was by Harry Sato, who had invented a machine that would turn plastic back into oil, diesel grade oil. And he was doing a demonstration of this machine that he had invented. And he said, the problem is it's expensive to do that. But in certain areas, it can be, he was exploring, bringing the costs down in certain areas like in the military, on ships out at sea. It makes sense to take the plastic waste and turn it into diesel oil to fuel the ship. And even cruise ships could look into that. But he said, when you go out, I'm sure you see it down in Fresno, you go out and you see farms that he said you'll see mountains of plastic that have covered the field to keep the weeds down. What are you going to do with that plastic? It's, you talk about deep ecology and seeing what is the true cost of something. You've got to look at disposal of it or recycling of it as a part of the original cost and being included in the original cost. That's me on my podium, my adversarial role. But if you want to look up Harry Sato, sato.harry@gmail.com, sato.harry@gmail.com, and that will show what he's doing with this invention. Well, thank you all very much. I didn't see any heads on the table, so I'm really glad that.
Oh, no, you are absolutely wonderful, and we could continue listening to you and all of your ideas, and like I said, your Dharma message. And actually, tomorrow, we will get to hear you again as our guest speaker for our Ohigan service.
Yes.
And so Greg tomorrow will have you in our Hondo. And so we will look forward very much to hearing your Dharma message tomorrow. Also, we're sad that you're not going to be here for dinner tonight. We were looking forward to having dinner with you, but that will have to be another time. We will do that. And I just want to quickly say, as far as like the Betsuin, the mindset of trying to have our sustainability practices, that Sharon over here is our Toban head this month. And so she's doing lunch tomorrow. And one of the first things she asked about was our compostable plates and everything. And so I think that mindset within our Sangha here is that people know that we are trying to use up all of our styrofoam right now. And so, and then replace it with the compostable. And we'll look into, I don't think Fresno has anything like Cedar Grove, but something like that would be something that would definitely be, we would definitely be a part of that. Also, would your sister like to attend tomorrow's service since you will be the speaker? Your sister?
Yeah, I don't think so. They're pretty housebound right now.
Oh.
Her husband's not well, and she's really got to take care of him. So
I see. Okay, because I was going to say we could pick her up and bring her over so she can see her brother.
Oh, that's so nice.
She'll have to wait then.
I would like to FaceTime with her, but she doesn't. She's even worse with technology than I am.
Well, you did a great job, and I am sure Greg too is very appreciative that you made his efforts probably a little bit easier. But once again, we can't thank Greg enough for making this possible, because if it weren't for him, we would just had to cancel completely, and we wouldn't have had this wonderful morning with you. And again, enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, and we'll see you tomorrow morning in our Hondo. And again, you gave us wonderful, wonderful information about Ikok Sangha and about the Dharma. And we are so grateful. I want to thank also Reverend Kaz. He has a memorial service right now, but for being the one to invite you as our guest lecturer this weekend. We are so grateful, and now I kind of feel that you're part of our Fresno Betsuin Sangha also. And so we look forward to seeing you again, and we'll see you in the morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. And if you would like to lead us in Castro, please, Reverend Castro.
Oh, I will. Thank you. Namo Amida Butsu Namanda, Namanda Butsu Namanda, Butsu Namanda, Butsu Namanda, Namanda.
And so to all of our attendees, I'm so glad that you were here this morning. And to the E&P committee for all the refreshments and everything. We're just have so much to be grateful for. And like I said, we look forward to hearing you tomorrow morning, Reverend Castro. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.